Cuba, it's me. Welcome to episode 212 of the W.I.L.L.I.W show, which stands for Wrestling is Life. Life is Wrestling. And today I want to talk about the one thing we didn't talk about yet, drugs in wrestling. Now, I've had a lot of experience being around people that do drugs, that don't do drugs, and wrestling is no different. There's not more wrestlers that do it than normal people. It's There's probably less of them. I mean, you have to be a strange breed to be in wrestling anyway, but that doesn't mean you have to be an addict or anything like that. But when I first started back out in the day in 2000, um, a lot of old timers, there was drugs around. It was mostly just alcohol and pot, to be quite honest. And most of it was done after the show, and it was not everybody. And like I said, in real life, I think the rate of people that do drugs is higher than in wrestling actually. But I mean, if you go back and look back to the '80s of like the WWEs and all those territory days, there was a lot. But like here in Ontario, when I broke in, I didn't see that much. And if there was, they didn't talk to the young 18-year-old kid about it. Like I think maybe you had to be in the circle. I mean, there was a few that dabbled. Like I said, mostly it was just pot and alcohol, and that was fine. A few of the old guys would have a beer before the match. Some people would smoke after the match. And then you'd had a few people that did that, but they mostly kept it in their circles of people that they trusted that they did it with. And I never saw it, and there was a couple times when, it was bring to my attention, but nobody ever peer pressured me into it like in high school, and nobody ever tried to get me to do anything I didn't want to do, and I never really did anything that I didn't want to do. So it was good for me. I had a few beer back in the day. After the shows, having a beer is a nice, refreshing feeling, and it helps calm you down because your adrenaline's going. I smoked a little bit back in the day, and you know, I didn't really see a lot of that. I heard a lot of stories about, oh, so and so did that, or it always would come out years later. Oh, you didn't know this guy was doing that? No, I had no clue. I was like this young, naive kid that came from a tiny town. But it never was a problem. I never seen people going out that were messed up, that couldn't perform because of it, or that were doing it. Everything that did go on, as far as I know, was kept private, and it was. I mean, I know this. I know everyone clicks on it, like drugs and wrestling. This is gonna be a juicy episode. Name some names. Tell me all the crazy. But there really wasn't. Maybe I just wasn't on good enough shows. I don't know, and I mean that's not the scene for me anyway. I didn't mind back when I was younger having a few beer and maybe smoking a little bit, but it's just not something that I go for now. I mean, I'd love to have a beer now after the show, but I mean most of the times I got the cameraman, so it doesn't really work out that way. But I have nothing against those people, the people that do a little bit of smoking and a little bit of alcohol. Like, it's not so bad if it's not like an addict thing. And like I said, as long as it's not affecting your in-ring performance, there's some people that smoke so much pot that they're tolerant to it, so it doesn't really do anything for them. Same with drinking. Um, I've wrestled a few guys that would have two or three beers before the match, and if anything, they were better when they than when they didn't drink. So I've never had any bad experience as a wrestling someone that was under the influence, and that I felt like my life or my health was at risk wrestling them. So I've only had really good things to say about the people in the locker rooms I've been around. But I know everyone's gonna say, "Oh, well, it's clickbait," but it's not. I'm just talking about my experience about drugs and wrestling, which is none. But a lot of times, you would get the old timers and the old timers that would be into whatever they were into, and people still came to see them, and the crowd still loved them. So, and most of them are getting away from it now. I mean, a lot of them drop like flies. I don't think it's so much like people say, "Oh, wrestlers always die young." Well, back in certain times in '70s and '80s, they were on the road 300 days a year. They were getting head injuries and concussions that they didn't know about, and they would go out and wrestle the next night. There were steroids, so like everyone claims just the one thing or just the one thing. But I think it's just a combination of everything, and I don't think you could chalk it up to just drugs or just steroids or just concussions. I think it's a combination, but I think the best thing is that wrestlers have learned from it now. They're more into video games and working out and social media. And plus, even if you are a wrestler that is into drugs and stuff like that, if you do plan on making it in any of the big companies, you're going to be tested anyway. So it's not like it's either you're going to have to choose between the two. So you're going to get to a crossroads there. But I would love to hear anybody else's take on it. Have you, as a fan, have you witnessed any wrestlers being under the influence or drugs or anything like that? Or as a wrestler, have you ever had an experience where you had to wrestle somebody and you didn't feel safe because they were intoxicated in some way or another? Because as always on the Willow Show, like or you get a leg drop, comment or you get a clothesline, subscribe or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling, Cuba.